In this section, I'm going to concentrate on the area around and in the constellation of Orion, including the Great Nebula in Orion M42. The Orion molecular cloud complex is the closest massive star-forming region to the Earth, and we've learned a great deal about stellar formations and evolutions from it. Those first two pictures were extremely wide-angle views of the Orion area. Notice the red Barnard's loop that kind of tends to loop around the Orion constellation. It's an emission nebula. It's part of the Orion molecular cloud, and it contains the Bright Horsehead Nebula and the Orion Nebula. The stars within the Orion Nebula are responsible for ionizing the loop. It extends over 10 degrees as seen from Earth. It's just huge. It's about 1,600 light years away, giving its actual dimensions about 300 light years across. It's thought that it originated in a supernova explosion about 2 million years ago. This is Barnard's loop I'm talking about. And it's also created several known runaway stars, including A, E, or Eurygia. This is the Orion area in the infrared wavelengths. The three vertical stars here are Orion's belt. At the bottom you see the Horsehead Nebula and the Flame Nebula, with the Orion Nebula off to the right. Again, the three belt stars with the Horsehead Nebula and the Flame Nebula to the left. 1,500 light years away. These are pictures that I personally took with my 8-inch Meade telescope and the apogee cooled CCD camera. The Andromeda galaxies first, and then you see the Horsehead Nebula and part of the Flame Nebula, and then if we wait a couple of seconds here, my picture of the Orion Nebula. These were all about 1 minute long exposures. Just amazing to get this detail with this technology. The Flame Nebula on the left here is NGC 2024. It's about 1,000 light years away. The bright star, the easternmost of the belt of Orion, shines energetic ultraviolet light onto the flame. This knocks electrons out of the great clouds of hydrogen. Much of the glow results when hydrogen recombine. Additional dark gas and dust lie in front of the bright part, which gives the dark network. The Horsehead Nebula, a distance of about 1,500 light years, called IC 434 or Barnard 33. The red or pinkish glow around the Horsehead Nebula comes from hydrogen, predominantly behind the nebula. It's ionized by the near bright star Sigma Orionis. The darkness of the Horsehead Nebula is caused mostly by thick dust, although the lower part of the Horsehead neck casts a shadow to the left. Streams of gas leaving the nebula are funneled by strong magnetic field. Bright spots in the Horsehead Nebula's base are young stars just in the process of forming. The Orion Nebula M42 is one of the brightest nebulas and is visible to the naked eye in the night sky. Distance 1,344 light years is the closest region of massive star formation to the Earth. 24 light years across, has a mass of about 2,000 times the Sun. The nebula has revealed much about the process of how stars and planet systems are formed from collapsing clouds of gas and dust. Astronomers have directly observed protoplanetary disks and brown dwarfs in it. The Orion Nebula M42 is 1,500 light years away, about 40 light years across, and is only 1 million years old. The youngest and brightest stars we see in the Orion Nebula are thought to be less than 300,000 years old, and the brightest may be only 10,000 years old. Very, very young. The red hue is caused by hydrogen alpha recombination at a wavelength of 656.3 nanometers. The blue-violet color is reflected radiation from massive O-class stars in the core of the nebula. The green hue is doubly ionized oxygen. Within the next 100,000 years, most of the gas and dust will be ejected due to stellar pressures, and it will just disappear, and the only thing you're going to have left is a young open star cluster. Bright young stars surrounded by wispy filaments, very similar to the Pleiades. This picture spans nearly 2 degrees, which means that this Orion Nebula picture is about the width of 4 of our full moons on the sky. This is the Orion Nebula in infrared wavelengths. By the way, it's also called Messier 42. The Orion Nebula contains a very young open cluster of stars known as the trapezium. It's an association of about 2,000 stars with a diameter about 20 light years. 2 million years ago, this cluster may have been the home of a runaway star, AE Eurygia, which are currently moving away from the nebula at velocities greater than 100 kilometers per second. There's over 700 stars in various stages of formation in the nebula. The trapezium cluster, over time, its ultraviolet light and massive stars will push away the surrounding gas and dust in the process called photoevaporation. The process is responsible for creating the interior cavity of the nebula, allowing stars from the core to be viewed from Earth. The largest stars of these stars have short lifespans and will evolve to become supernovae. Protoplanetary disks within the Orion Nebula, dubbed propylids, there's more than 150 of them. They are considered to be systems in the earliest stages of solar system formation. Massive stars and young stars have much stronger stellar winds than the Sun. Winds form shock waves. When it encounters the gas in the nebula, it shapes the gas clouds. Shock waves from stellar wind also play a large part in stellar formation by compacting the gas clouds that lead to gravitational collapse of the cloud. There are also supersonic bullets of gas piercing the hydrogen clouds. Each bullet is 10 times the diameter of Pluto's orbit and tipped with iron atoms glowing bright blue. They were probably formed thousands of years ago from an unknown violent event. The yellowish wakes here are 1/5 of a light year long. Notice the shock wave coming off of this star above center and a little bit to the left. It's LL Orion. Its bow shocks are stationary and are formed when two particle streams collide with each other. They are present near the hottest stars in the nebula, where stellar wind speeds is estimated to be thousands of kilometers per second. The upper left-hand shoulder of Orion is the star Beetlejuice. It's a supergiant red star that's slowly evaporating its outer atmosphere.